Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Today we're going to be having our API360 Microservices Summit. So thanks, everyone, for coming. I think we have a really good day ahead of us. My name is Matt McLarty. I'm the Vice President of the API Academy as part of CA Technologies. We started the API Academy about 4 years ago to help a lot of companies out there, enterprises of all sizes and all industries. We're all interested in this boom around web APIs and how they could be a new channel for business, a new technology paradigm, helping to fuel mobile applications and different third-party integration and all sorts of different scenarios. Now we see it very popular in the IoT space. And so we've been doing that. We've been working with companies, working with the industry, speaking at events and writing things. But a couple of years ago, we started to notice a trend that had a very strong affinity with APIs, which was microservices. This movement that kind of grew up organically with APIs as a central piece of it. It's now become tied to container technology. But there's so much more to microservices than technology that we started to get really interested in the success stories that we'd heard about and started talking to companies about how they were able to benefit from microservices. And we got so interested in it that we ended up actually writing a book for O'Reilly that just came out. And so today is really an event to celebrate our book coming out, but it's especially to bring everyone together to talk about best practices around microservices, all the different aspects of it, look at it from many different perspectives, so that we can help build a community around this. So I'll go over the agenda in a second, but just to kind of set the context a little bit. This is when I think about microservices. We can think about the hot trend of the day, but really there's another way of looking at it in the evolutionary line of how software engineering has been progressing. And I like to use analogies. People who see me speak, I like to go back in time. So if we think about once upon a time, if we look back 100 years or 120 years or so, there were trains, right? Trains in the 19th century kind of swept as a new technology innovation. It was groundbreaking. You had a new way of transporting lots of people. They could go places that they'd never gone before, and it fueled all sorts of industry changes and innovations across all of society. But trains, there were problems, right? We had, it took a lot of money, a lot of effort to try and lay infrastructure, lay groundwork, put tracks down. When you wanted to go somewhere, you couldn't just, take your personal train somewhere. You had to check the schedules. You were dependent on all these other people who were going places. And so, and they only traveled at certain times. So when the car came out, it was another massive innovation, because now, instead of having to be dependent on this other thing and all these other people, you now were liberated. You could take your car where you wanted to go. You'd be out on the open road. And so now people had this new experience of going places, less cost around the infrastructure for it, and they could go where they wanted to go. When it started out, there was, it was still kind of a hobbyist thing or for the elite. And it wasn't really until the assembly line and Henry Ford's innovation around how to create cars that really made things affordable, brought cars to the masses so that everybody could pretty much afford a car and drive a car, and that really changed things. But it brought its own changes, right? Now, instead of thinking, I'm just one person on the open road, I have all the freedom, we have these situations where we've got all these cars piled up together trying to figure out where they can go. And really for the automotive transportation, in order to make it scale to what we know today around traffic systems and self-driving cars, we had to go from traffic lights to highway systems, fuel stations to a massive oil and gas industry, repair stations to research and development around how to build new and innovative cars. So, we can kind of, it's not a perfect analogy, but we can make the comparison to software engineering. And we always like to think of ourselves on the cutting edge of doing these new and fantastic things. But if you parallel what we're doing in software engineering to what happened in the transportation industry, we're kind of on the same path. We're a pretty young industry around building software. So we can look at microservices as our car moment. Now we have a way of breaking down functionality and services in a way that makes it much more pluggable, much more liberating, much more independent for people to build software. And in fact, maybe we have our assembly line with Docker and containers, where now we have a way of kind of mass producing those microservices and making them much more portable and making them much more accessible to the masses. But I think right now in the software, in the microservices movement, as well as in the software engineering space, we're kind of at this point where now we understand we've got all that, we have that liberating moment of driving on the open road with our independent microservices, but now we're starting to see the issues that may come out with scale. We need to figure out the system aspect of things. It's one thing to think about a microservice as its own thing, but when you put all those microservices together, you have these system effects. You've got a very complex system environment. So we need to figure out all those pieces to make this scale and help our industry of software engineering evolve. And that's what today is about, is starting a conversation to cover all these different aspects. So we've got a great packed agenda coming up. We're going to go through some really, the morning is going to be kind of focused on the implementation stories that are out there. You're going to hear some great information from companies who are on the forefront of microservices, as well as some established enterprises that are right now going through the process of adapting to microservices. And we've got a great panel coming up. And then in the afternoon, we've got more information around the technology and the software engineering aspects of microservices. And of course, we have our special guest, Mel Conway, here to talk about his career in the software engineering, which follows a really interesting path of the evolution of the software engineering space. So we're going to have lots of opportunity to learn things today. We're going to save the big question period for the end of the day, but we'll have a little chance with some of the speakers when they're up to ask questions. But I know we started a bit late. I don't want to take up any more time. So right now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, which is Ronnie Mitra from the API Academy.